welcome to Let's Play Gran Turismo 3, episode 75. And more officially, it is now time for the third and final part of the Professional Gran Turismo All-Stars, and where officially, up to this point, I have won all 7 races in the championship so far. Even though I'm pretty sure by the time we get to Route 11 Reverse, that streak is going to end. Because I am pretty certain the Master is probably going to have me beat on 2 out of 3 of these circuits. Probably. But it's fine, because all I really need is... yeah, that should do it. I figured, since I knew my car was sliding around a lot in Seattle, I figured I'd just put on a little bit more downforce so that I can actually get through the corners. I know this may create more drag in the turbulent air, but the truth is, I need some more downforce if I'm going to stay in control of this thing. But anyways, here we are. So, Route 11 Reverse, and officially I'm pretty certain this is where my win streak will probably end. 5 red lights, and it is go for race number 8. Here at Route 11 Reverse, and obviously I put on more downforce so that my car would not be sliding around as much, even though it still does continue to slide around quite a lot. All tyres, this thing still handles like shit. And already the Master is out in front. I'm pretty certain in saying that this is where my win streak will probably end. But again, it's fine because I only really need to finish in 4th place or better in order to officially win the championship, and I'm pretty certain that overall I am confident enough to say I can do that, especially considering I do of course have the most durable tyres, and this GT40 is just fucking handsome. But again, it doesn't matter because I'm already up to 2nd position. So, all I really need at the very least is 4th position in this race to mathematically clinch the championship. Because I'm pretty certain the Master will probably have me nailed to the wall for probably 2 out of 3 of these races, because I have heard the AI are also stronger around Tokyo than myself, and so obviously I'm not going to be trying too hard to go for the lead. I'm just trying to see if this car will make it through the corners better than it was in Seattle, because even though I won that race in Seattle Reverse, I was just literally sliding everywhere. I was just literally sliding everywhere when we were at Seattle, and technically overall I thought for sure I had virtually no chance of winning with the countless number of errors I was making, but surprisingly, in the end, I still won the race anyway, because the Master had to stop in for fresh tyres. And oddly enough, it was basically tyre longevity that saved me from finishing 2nd fiddle to the Master. Although, the way this race has gone so far, I am doubtless in saying that I will probably not catch up to the Master, because even when he does make his pit stop, I'm pretty certain this is where the win streak will probably end, because the Mazda, I would imagine, is probably going to be looking stronger around this circuit, along of course with also being stronger around Tokyo than myself as well, so all I really need to worry about now is just consistency. Because I'm pretty certain, to say the least, that I will manage to clinch the championship mathematically by the time we get to the end of this. Oh shit! Yep, okay. I am still spinning, and as I anticipated, the Mazda is now pretty much 9 seconds clear of me. But again, it's fine, because I've basically won all 7 races up to this point, fortunately, and I'm pretty certain that as long as I can just stay in second, the championship will be mine regardless of what happens. And then, once I have managed to finish this championship, I'm pretty certain that I will be guaranteed to win at least 7 out of 10 of these races, because up to this point, that is exactly what I have done with the Zonda. And already the gap is now 13.5 seconds. And as I anticipated in this race, I have gotten no chance of catching the Mazda, unfortunately. So, it looks as though for 2 out of these final 3 races, so it looks as though for 2 out of these final 3 races, I would say the Mazda probably has been nailed to the wall. Even though I am hopeful, to say the least, in iterating that I will manage to win at Gran Reverse, because oddly enough, the AI don't seem to get around Gran Valley Reverse. As well as the player might do. And I say might do because I too, of course, could basically be driving like shit. Although, it doesn't matter too much because, like I said before, all I really need to do is finish in 4th place or better in this race, and then, no matter what the Mazda does up to this point, the championship is basically mine. Because he could basically win the final 3 races and yet still not win the championship, because of the 7 races that I won prior to this one. Because of the 7 races that I won prior to this one. So, I'm pretty certain, to say the least, that since both myself and the Mazda have both pretty much separated ourselves from the rest of the field, that obviously I probably will hold on for the 2nd position, and of course, since I know very well I only have one of the prototypes to compete with, ultimately That is the only reason why I've managed to win 7 out of 7 races so far in this championship. Almost lost the rear end there. Oh, son of a bitch. Yep, okay. Yep, okay. I am still continuing to spin around too much. 20 seconds now the interval, so I think it's fair to say that there is probably no chance of me catching the master up to this point, because even if he does, because even by the time he does make a pit stop, I am fairly certain he will probably be a pit stop clear of me, as of which he is already 21 seconds clear of me as a result of my spin. And the only thing he's really doing at the moment is basically continuing the tearaway streak that I of course had when I was dominating these races. So I really have no problems with this, because I only need to finish in 4th place or better to mathematically clinch the championship. And I'm pretty certain, to say the least, in knowing that I probably will manage to win at Gran Valley Reverse, because I have noticed the AI don't seem to get around Gran Valley Reverse as the player might do, and oddly enough, overall, Gran Valley, in my honest opinion, is a great circuit. Certainly one of my personal favourite circuits created by Polyphony Digital, who by the way were also the company that notably created the GT series. And to anyone who is asking me which course I prefer between this one and Route 5, I would say Special Stage Route 5 is a better circuit to drive than Route 11. And there are quite a few reasons for that, and not just because Route 5 has basically become one of the classical city circuits in this gaming franchise. And I do manage to improve on my best PB, but again, all I really need to do up to this point is just hold on to 2nd position, not make too many mistakes, and hopefully by the time his AI have made their pit stops, I should be able to hold on for potentially 2nd position against all the yachts. Now, if I had to compete against 2 or more prototypes in this game, that would be a different story. Because there is a total of 3 prototypes in this game, and I'm doubtless in saying that by the time we do get into the professional GT World Championship, we'll probably be competing against all 3 of those heavy hitters, so there's basically no avoiding that. And up to this point in the GT All-Stars, since I've won 7 out of 7 races so far, I am very much experienced enough to know what is at stake, and since I've basically been way the fuck ahead of everyone else since the drop of the green flag. The Mazda is clearly in a league of his own. I've got no chance of catching him now because he is basically a pit stop clear of me by now. And I think it's fair to say this is like I predicted it would when my win streak ends. But if I can just hold on to second place, that should give me an overall total of 76 points, and I will very much be more than enough, and I will very much be more than good in terms of scoring enough points to officially winning the championship overall, mathematically. Because I managed to win all 7 races up to this point, and I'm pretty sure that since I pretty much have not a chance in hell of catching the Mazda, I would say all I really need to do now is just focus on maintaining second, which I'm fairly confident is something I am going to be able to do regardless of how many mistakes I make, because ultimately I do have the second fastest car in the field. It's exactly where I've been running all race long. It doesn't matter what the Mazda does up to this point. I would say victory for the first time is probably going to be his. Even though I am closing up slightly, I'm pretty certain he will answer my questions and saying why exactly he may not be pushing. So, ultimately, say it probably doesn't matter up to this point what happens now, because the Mazda, even when he does make his pit stop, he probably will still have me beat unless I cheat, which oddly enough is one thing I'm not planning on doing, because for once here at Route 11 I am trying to drive a clean race. So the Mazda must be on worn tyres up to this point, but again, I still have no chance of catching him and overtaking him unless it was an endurance race, and realistically, I would not think of that to be the case, and so ultimately I'm basically doing the only appropriate thing, and that's just conceding to the position I know for sure I am inevitably going to finish in. So the Mazda does have some worn tyres from what I can establish. But again, it doesn't matter too much, because no matter what happens from here, I will have scored enough points to mathematically win the championship, even though officially I still need to compete in the final 2 races in order for this championship to officially be done. So, even though I am starting to close up to the Mazda, I'm pretty certain that even if I do manage to overtake him, he will probably overtake me back regardless of what happens from this point onwards. The FTO at the moment is not having a good race. And a little bit of contact there with the FTO, but it doesn't bother me too much because he's just a half marker, and somehow he still punts me because he thought I was not going deep enough for him, and he just fucked himself because he spun right before the chicane as a result of punting me. And oddly enough, even though he did attempt to rack me, the truth is I've got myself on the binders. It doesn't really matter what happens up to this point. I am more than certain, to say the least, in saying that overall, if I can finish this race, then the championship overall should be mine. And once again, the Esperante is nuts. Considering he is basically right the fuck ahead of the FTO, so the FTO must have really been off the pace. And so the Mazda does now manage to come into the pits after 11 laps of competition. Because pit stops are very fast in this game, even though I am closing in on the Mazda, I'm pretty certain, to say the least, in saying that even if I do get past him, as I do, he will easily overtake me back because he's basically had the best car all night. So he does come out of the pits now. Even though excuse me. And even though he has now made his pit stop, and I do apologise for the coughing, but officially, since he has now made his pit stop, I am pretty certain from here he will probably hold on to the race lead by the time those tyres warm up, because I myself am basically on some scuffed tyres at the moment. I'm sure it will not be long before he starts building up an interval. There is basically no way I am going to beat the Master up to this point in the race. So 1.1 seconds is now the interval. And even though I am managing to stay close to him very briefly, the truth is I'm still pretty certain in saying he will probably beat me anyway, so ultimately I don't think there's any surprise there, because his AI tend to get around Route 11 better than I do. It seems, of course, to be one of their more suited circuits, in my honest opinion, and already the gap has now increased to 2.5 seconds. So up to this point, I would say victory by now is probably a lost cause. Also, furthermore, these tyres are starting to show signs of wear. At least the front tyres are. But again, at the very least, I can say that coincidentally, if there was any course where I knew my win streak was going to end if it wasn't a test course, it would probably have to be at Route 11 in reverse. Because the AI tend to claw their ways around Route 11 better than I do, on both the forward and reverse circuit, and that's exactly what the case is proving to be here. So, I may not be winning at the present time, but at the very least, I can definitely say for sure that as long as I can finish this race, the championship is pretty much going to be mine. And furthermore, there is no point in me making a pit stop up to this point in the race, because obviously these tyres have managed to make it up to the end of every race so far. And it looks as though we're now coming up to overlapping the Esperante, because the FTO is pretty much way the fuck behind everyone else. And it looks as though that's who the Mazda is coming to overlap. No doubt in saying he probably will overlap him before this day is done. And even though I can see the rotary powered 787B is right up ahead of me. Also, furthermore, the GT40 is now ahead of the S2000. Anyways. Penultimate lap coming up to the end of, and officially trying to see if I can overlap the Panos, who is not giving me any fighting room. Although, it doesn't matter too much because I'm pretty certain, to say the least, in saying that I will manage to overtake him by the time we get down to the first corner. I will manage to overlap him, and officially both the Panos and the FTO are now ultimately one lap down in this race. So, final lap of Route 11 reverse. The Mazda is just up ahead of me, but obviously I'm not going to be bothered on fighting too much. Even though I could fight for the win, realistically I only need 3 points to clinch the championship, and I'm pretty certain, since both of us are way the fuck ahead of the GT40 and the S2000, there is no doubt in saying that victory in the championship overall up to this point is guaranteed. So the Mazda is managing to pull away again, as I thought he would, and officially, even though this is where my win streak ends, it does not matter, because this is also where I ultimately win the championship overall. So, through these final sequence of corners we go now, and through the final chicane, which I do manage to slot myself through this time. Doesn't look like I'm going to overlap the Honda, unfortunately, and officially it is second place in the race, but it doesn't matter because I have mathematically won the championship. By finishing second, I have won the championship. So, lost by 3.6 seconds over the Mazda in the end of that, and the S2000 was just overlapped, along with the Esperante and the FTO. And let's now wait, of course, for the GT40 to finish, dependent on how long he fucking takes. Finally! I had to wait nearly 2 minutes for the GT40 to finish that race, and surprisingly he did manage to finish on the lead lap. So, in the end of that race, I officially have 76 points to my name. The Mazda gets his first win in the championship, and I would imagine he'll probably win in Tokyo as well. But again, it doesn't matter because I have already clinched the championship. Aggregately, the championship is now mine. So, I am leading by 24 points over the Mazda, the S2000 is still third ahead of the FTO, the Aspirante is in 5th, and the GT40 is starting to catch up to the Aspirante. So, second place in the race, but still first place in the championship overall. And officially, because I am going to be traditional, I will save this replay. Alright, there we go. Let's now move onwards to Grand Valley, where I am pretty certain that this will probably be another one of my playgrounds. Championship is already decided, but the other positions are yet to be decided. Let's get to it. So, through turn 1 we go. The GT40 already slides out wide. Unfortunately, I am managing to slot myself up the inside. Everyone is getting sketchy at the moment, trying to avoid all of this chaos. The Mazda currently has a 3¼ second cushion after the first sector, but however, it will not be long before I manage to clear myself from the rest of these AI, and then once I've done that, I will hopefully manage to overtake the Mazda before the end of this race, because I'm already starting to close in. The AI don't seem to get around the reverse circuit as competently as they would the normal circuits. And already the Mazda has run out wide through the corner, and as we head up to the hairpin, I now take the lead. So, as I anticipated, this course is another one of my playgrounds. I am pretty certain that once pit stops happen, I will manage to win this race, as long as I don't make too many mistakes. As long as I know it is not too long before pit stops happen, officially I should be able to hopefully go for the race win. So, already on to lap 2 here at Grand Valley Reverse. The number 24 Pagani Zonda has now officially taken the advantage. After one lap, gap is now just about 3.2 seconds. And officially, I can say because I'm able to get through the corners better than the Mazda, officially, I can now say this is pretty much where I will start to separate myself from the rest of these AI, because I am now pretty much 6 seconds clear of the Mazda, and even though his straight line speed will help him to close up that margin to me, the truth is it will only be temporary, because I will still be able to separate myself through the corners, which is exactly where I have officially come down to my comfort zone. Because oddly enough, his AI are competitive down the straights, but ironically at the same time they are nowhere near as competitive around the corners. And the corners are exactly where I have officially managed to basically hope and pray and saying that this race will hopefully be race win number 8. And I'm pretty confident in saying it probably will be, because up to this point I've already won 7 races, and I would imagine this will more than likely be 8 out of 10 races won in the that have. So I've already won 7 out of 8 races so far in this championship. I'm pretty certain that because I have a bit more competence around this circuit than the AI does, I'm pretty certain, to say the least, in saying that I probably will win this race with relative ease once pit stops happen. And then once they do, I will have officially taken home the gold in 8 out of 10 races. Because I can assure you, I will definitely not win in Tokyo. Because I would think Tokyo is probably going to be a lost cause, since the AI do seem, of course, to be significantly better than me in Tokyo. Although I would say, up to this point, the win which I've probably fought for the hardest would probably have to be at midfield reverse, which I think goes all the way back to race number 3 in this championship. Because I mean, I really had to fight my way just to separate myself from the Mazda by enough of a margin to eventually win the race, and the main reason for that was ultimately because of tyre strategy that ultimately got me up to victory circle. It was exactly when I had officially won the race by default of pit stops. The one thing I did not have to make, and I have not made so far in this championship up to this point, and I have no plans or ambitions of stopping in for tyres anytime soon. At least not in this championship, or the next. So the championship has already been decided 2 races early. I am fairly certain, to say the least, in saying this will probably be an easy win, because on the circuit where I've looked comfortable, I have managed to take the lead and then basically just dominate the rest of the race by the end of it. And then once I have done that, obviously, I've basically just been the dominant force for pretty much most of these races. I'm pretty certain this one will make it 8 out of 10 wins going to the Pagani Zonda. And officially we are now 5 laps down. I am pretty much a pit stop clear of the Mazda up to this point, because an average pit stop usually takes about 24-25 seconds. So I'm pretty certain up to this point the race win by the time we get up to lap 10 will probably be mine, because the gap after 5 laps is now already 28.4 seconds, and ultimately I can say at the very least that I am trying. So 28 seconds is now the interval. After the Mazda has officially crossed over the bridge. So I am pretty much more than half a minute clear of the Mazda by now, and as I predicted, of course, once I took the lead in this race, I was pretty certain that I would probably be the dominator once again, because, like I said before, this circuit is another one of my playgrounds compared to the AI, and I'm more than certain that up to this point I probably will manage to overlap most of the field. With the exception of the Mazda, he will probably be the only one that manages to stay on the lead lap. And so, we are now on lap 7. I would say the win up to this point has probably already been decided, but again, nothing is officially decided until the drop of the checkered flag. And then once the checkered flag has been dropped, that's when you know the race is over. So, only 1 lap away now from the halfway point by the time I've completed this lap. I've basically been the dominant force throughout this championship, and because of my minimum downforce setting that I used at test course, that was the only reason why I did of course manage to win at test course, and also because of my increased speed as well, because, you know, I think that did also help me to engage my advantages over the Mazda, because apparently there might be he did not have the advantage in terms of straight line speed, or overall straight line speed. And oddly enough, until I thought for sure pit stops were going to happen, I did not think that in the end of that I was going to end up winning the race overall. However, I did of course have to put my car on basically the least amount of downforce it could get, and also increase the speed very slightly just to give me a little bit more of an advantage. And oddly enough, I think both of those helped me hugely once it came down to who exactly had the best car at the end of the day, and then ultimately, as a result of that, I basically went on to win the race once pit stops happened. So I have overlapped both the Esperante and the FTO now, and all I have to do now is overlap the Ford and the Honda, and my lap times at the moment are pretty good at the present time. Managing, of course, to hold on to a relatively steady lead up to this point. 8 laps are down and still 7 remain. The Mazda does now officially come into the pits after only 8 laps of competition, as of which I should also mention Gran definitely has a history of chomping up the tyres, and oddly enough that is also proving to be the case here once again, as of which the Mazda officially had to pit in for a fresh set of rubber, and as a result that has now basically allowed me to separate myself by nearly a full lap ahead of the Mazda, and getting a slipstream off both the Ford and the Honda, and officially I've now overlapped everyone else after just completing 9 laps of competition. The GT40 is literally battling tooth and nail at the moment with the S2K, but again, the two of them are still pretty much duking it out, seeing who exactly will eventually win the war for 3rd place, as of which the deuce position has already been taken by the Mazda, because both myself and the Mazda are pretty much way the fuck ahead of everyone else up to this point in the championship. Wars are yet to be decided, of course, in this championship, and I'm pretty certain, to say the least, in saying that this will probably be where the Ford will manage to take over 5th position from the Panos because of his late season consistency, but dependent on knowing if he will beat the Honda to 3rd position in the championship overall remains to be seen, because we only have 1 race to go after this one, and I'm pretty certain that if the Ford is lucky, he will manage to possibly finish in... Also, by the way, I now set a new best lap time by 1.4 seconds. And going back to the subject of knowing if the GT40 will clinch 4th position or not from the FTO up to this point, I would say that is more than a possible. I would say that is more than a distinctive possibility, as of which I would say the Ford, because of his late charging consistency probably will take over the 4th position by the time we're done with Tokyo. I would say the Honda by now has probably already clinched 3rd place in the championship, and it does look as though the Ford probably will become a fighter. For the 4th position, and I am now starting to close in on the Mazda up to this point, so I think it's fair to say that I probably did not need my engine tuning to help me win this race, but obviously I still put it on anyway because I figured I still kept it on because I figured I was needing to be cautious, and because of the drafting I had on the previous lap, that was the main reason why I set a lap time within the mid-141s. Anyways, lap 12, and it is looking more and more like I probably will overlap the Mazda before the day is done, meaning of course that this will probably be the only time all championship long that I have officially overlapped pretty much the entire field. And so it does look as though this will officially be the only race that I do manage to overlap every other competitor in this event. Victory, I can say up to this point, is more or less guaranteed, regardless of what happens next. My front tyres are starting to show potential signs of wear, but again, it does not matter because I am still keeping myself in contention for the race win, even though obviously up to this point I have no challengers, and ultimately it does look as though this will officially be the first and only time in the championship where I do manage to overlap the entire field. So there we go, I have pretty much lapped the field here at Gran Valley Reverse. Because that is how much more competent I am through the corners than his AI. And the Mazda is trying to get back on the lead lap. I let him slot himself in there, but again, he literally has to park it at the chicane to avoid himself from ultimately hitting the concrete wall, but again, it doesn't matter because he still makes contact with the concrete wall once he found first gear. I pretty much knew that was going to happen once he went too deep into the corner. He was basically way too deep in order to officially make that corner, and as a result of that, I am now pretty much one lap ahead of the rest of the field now. So the only thing I'm really doing at the moment is just trying to keep this thing under control. We are now approaching the end of lap 13. We now have just 2 laps to go. I will be the only one that finishes on the lead lap here at Gran Valley Reverse. I've also driven over 650 kilometers now, which I would think is probably somewhere under 400 miles, or somewhere over 400 miles. Even though I'll probably need a calculator to figure that out, for how many miles I've officially driven in this car, converted of course from kilometers to miles. Even though the PAL version has the imperial units, sorry, the metric units and not the imperial units. So my left front tyre is showing some signs of wear, but even though Grand Valley does have a history of literally chomping down the tyres, the truth is, up to this point, I will inevitably win this race, because I am pretty much well over a lap ahead of the rest of the field, and I managed to overlap the Pagani for the second time now in this race, although it doesn't matter because he comes into the pits anyway. The FTO just manages to finish his pit stop, as of which he comes out and both of them are now 2 laps down. So that is literally how dominant I was once I took the lead, officially away from the Mazda. I pretty much overlapped the entire field. So, every other competitor in this race has officially been overlapped. I have also managed to overlap both the Pagani and the Mitsubishi twice in this race, and the S2K is staying ahead of the GT40, so I think that's pretty much become the deciding factor of who will finish, of who exactly will finish third in this championship. I've pretty much dominated this race from start to finish. I am coming through the first hairpin now for the final time here at Grand Valley Reverse. The championship has already been clinched, but officially, no matter what happens up to this point, I am still pretty certain in saying that I will win this race. As we now come across the line, and it is officially going to be 8 out of 9 wins to the Pagani Zonda. Alright, and overall I have pretty much overlapped the entire field, so let's now wait for everyone else to finish. Alright, everyone has finished, and so officially this will be the first and only time in the championship that I have overlapped the entire field, because even the Mazda was 1 lap down. So, it is officially 8 wins to the Pagani Zonda, and I am pretty certain that will probably also be my final win in the championship, because the Mazda will probably dominate Tokyo. And just tried to hold it a sneeze. But yeah, we're looking good. The championship is already ours, and I have won 8 races. So, Tokyo, I'm pretty certain, will be a race that I do not win, but again, it's fine, because no matter what happens, I'll still be confirmed as the champion anyway. So, the S2K is looking good for... is officially looking good for 3rd position, but of course 4th and 5th positions are yet to be decided. So let's do this. It is now time for the final race of the professional GT All-Stars. And I should have saved the game, but Alright, here we go. Final race of the Professional GT All-Stars. Officially... I'm pretty certain, to say the least, in saying that up to this point, the championship has pretty much been decided. And officially, as I expected, the Mazda has already pulled out an interval. And pretty much all these AI at the moment are having quite an interesting time staying ahead of me. And the GT40 does manage to force his way past the Honda. I am now starting to slice my way through the field, as I'm already up to 3rd position. The GT40 is following me, whilst we also have the Pagani Zonda right in front of us. I am now 4 seconds behind the Mazda, although it doesn't matter because I figured that going into this race, the Mazda was probably going to dominate over the rest of us, but it doesn't matter because the championship is already well and truly mine, regardless of what happens next. And I'm pretty certain once the Aspirante has made his pit stop, that is officially when I will take the 2nd position. So, 8 seconds back now to the Mazda, so I would say up to this point, I pretty much have no chance of winning this race as I hit the the inside wall. And at the moment, of course, the Aspirante is actually running pretty good here in Tokyo, because he's actually staying ahead of me. Although, it doesn't really matter too much because the Aspirante will probably stop in after about 5 laps, and then once he does, that's officially when I will take over the 2nd position. So regardless of how many mistakes I'm making at the moment, the truth is, I am still pretty certain, to say the least, in saying that I will manage to hopefully finish 2nd in this race, judging by how many pit stops these AI have made. And I am slowly closing in on the Pagani now, so he is not doing all that well at the moment in terms of straight line speed. I am quickly closing in my number 24 Pagani Zonda. I'm quickly closing down the interval. And officially, the Mazda, I would say, has pretty much just harpooned himself away from the rest of us, because he's pretty much increasing his lead by about at least 3 or 4 seconds per lap. And it wouldn't surprise me if he manages to overlap me in response to my domination at Gran Valley. And the Pagani ran wide there. This could be the opportunity I need to take the 3rd position. I slot myself round the outside, and I am officially up into the 2nd position here in Tokyo. I figured he would fuck himself somewhere on this course, and that is exactly how I managed to take over the 2nd position. So, 3 laps will be complete. Following this hairpin turn, the Mazda, like he did at Route 11, he was very much out in a league of his own. I'm pretty certain that my hopes for victory by now have certainly dashed, because even when he does make his first pit stop, He will probably be at least 2 pit stops clear of me by the time this race is done. And overall, I would say this could very well be the result the Pagani is looking forward to, officially clinching potentially 4th place in the championship, because the S2K has already clinched 3rd position up to this point. So this could be what the Pagani need to potentially take home the 4th position ahead of both the GT40 and the FTO. If he manages to build up enough of an interval before the first round of pit stops, he should officially have a likely shot of prospering with the 3rd position in this race, and subsequently helping him to maybe take 4th place in the championship. Meanwhile, the front 2 positions have already been decided, and ultimately at this point I would say that victory in the championship overall has evidently been decided, like I said before, and ultimately the win up to this point in this race will certainly be given to the Mazda. Even though I am trying to race as much as I can, the truth is the Mazda probably will pay me back for overlapping him at Grand Valley probably, which essentially means of course that whilst he has been dominating this race along with Route 11, the Esperante does now come to the pits after 5 laps as I anticipated, even though it will probably not be long before he eventually manages to retake the 3rd position before lap 10 when he stops him again. And it is fair to say that that is clearly one of the fastest cars in the field, at least in terms of the midfield pack. And it's fair to say the Mazda, since he started from the pole and got through the first corner, he's basically just been out there in the lead, and he's basically looking more than likely to stay there. Although it is already too little too late, because I already won the championship 2 races prior to this, and furthermore I'm basically more than good enough for the championship overall. Because of my consistency. Right, so lap 7, and I am still managing to keep myself well ahead of the rest of the field by now. So regardless of what happens up to this point, I'm pretty certain that second position, now that pit stops look like they're going to be made very soon, probably will be mine, and by the time that has happened, I would imagine I will be the only other one besides the Mazda that will evidently finish this race on the lead lap. So, 7 laps have now been completed, and we are just 1 lap away from the halfway point, as of which I can now confirm the Mazda is pretty much a pit stop clear from me. So no matter what happens from here, the win is probably looking more than good enough for me. Overall, regardless of what happens, even if that happens, I will still finish this race in second position, because even though it's taken me 8 laps to spin out through that part of the course, it took me nearly 8 laps to spin the car, but I figured I was going to do that eventually, because obviously overall this car has taken more than its fair share of wins, and oh shit. Oh, fuck me. I almost thought for sure I was going to do a 360 there, but fortunately it was only a 180. It was not a 360. And ultimately, after 9 laps in this race, the Zonda, I would say, is looking more than good enough for clinching the victory by now, as of which he is coming up to overlapping the back markers in this race. Oh fuck. Okay. And the Mazda now makes his first scheduled pit stop after 9 laps, although it doesn't matter too much because he will still beat me on pure pace alone, because that is just how dominant the Mazda has been all race long. But obviously, too bad for him to say it's too little too late, because even if he does win this race, which I'm pretty certain in saying he will, I will still have an overall winning margin of 24 points in the end, so ultimately that is exactly how much domination I will have had for most of this championship. God. Okay. It's alright, it's fine. I got it saved. Anyways. Closing in slightly, but I'm not anticipating myself to close in for the race lead, because even if I do cheat up to this point, I'm pretty certain that since the Mazda does have the fresh set of boots, evidently, even if I do cheat up to this point, he will still have me beat on pure pace alone. Because that is how dominant the Wankel rotary powered engine has been over my Mercedes powered V12. So, 10 laps are now complete and still 5 remain. My tyres are starting to show a little bit of wear up to this point. I could make a pit stop in this race if I really wanted to, but realistically I'm not too bothered because there's no point in me trying to go for the fastest lap. It'll just make this race take longer, and obviously that is one thing I don't want to do. I don't want this race to be made any longer than it already is, essentially. And the Panos is once again in the pits, along with the S2K, so evidently it does look as though the Panos is officially going to take third position in this race by the time both the GT40 and the FTO have made their pit stops. The Mazda has clearly been the dominant driving force in this race, and already the gap has now increased to 17.6 seconds after 11 laps of competition. And it does look as though my final points total is officially going to be 92 points because I have already won 8 out of 10 races, and I am hopeful in saying that I will of course manage to earn myself a decent prize car from this championship, but if I don't, then well, I'll be cursed. Because well, the prize car giving structure really knows how to fuck with you. When you have a shot at getting potentially 2 really good prize cars and 2 not so good prize cars. But I am hopeful in saying that I will manage to withstand it. And the GT40 does now come into the pits, so I think that's pretty much decided where he will finish in this championship. Probably in last, judging by how his runs have been going, and I do manage to set a new PB, a new personal best here in Tokyo after 12 laps. And it looks as though the 787B has got me beat here in Tokyo, but again, it doesn't matter because I knew a clean sweep was not going to be possible with my Pagani Zonda unless I didn't have any of the prototypes at all, which was not going to be likely. And officially, one thing I can now say for sure is that ultimately the championship up to this point has more than certainly been decided. So the GT40 has already been overlapped. The S2K is currently running in the 5th position behind the Mitsubishi FTO, and it is the Panos that is running in 3rd, because that is how much on-track pace he has had all race long and will evidently be looking like he will take 4th place in the championship as a result of this. So 2 laps to go now. The FTO brakes a little bit later than I do because he thinks I'm not braking late enough, probably. But again, it doesn't matter. The championship has certainly been decided up to this point. There are only 2 laps to go, and I'm pretty certain, to say the least, in saying that I will of course manage to get myself something decent from this championship. So 2 laps to go now. I am now overlapping the 3rd placed car, the Pagani Zonda GTR1, who is now running, of course, in the 3rd position, pretty much well ahead of the rest of the field by now. And I do overlap him briefly, but I also run wide. Pretty certain I will manage to get him down the straight. I'm not pushing up to this point. I've pretty much gone for the consolidarity option of just taking the 2nd position. And trying to overlap the Panos. He heads into the wall, trying to defend his position of being on the lead lap, but inevitably he was going to be overlapped. And also, furthermore, I just realised this is now the final lap. So yeah, anyways. Final lap here in Tokyo, and also the final lap of the Professional and GT All-Stars in the Championship, which I clinched 2 races early, because this is the final race, and ultimately, overall, the Mazda is inevitably going to win this race, but at the very least, I will manage to come home in 2nd position, and still say for the most part that I just decimated the opposition. And even though I've only won 1 out of the final 3 races, the truth is, it doesn't matter anymore, because the championship, up to this point, has officially been decided. And so, there we go. The Professional GT All-Stars is done. And let's now wait for everyone else to finish, as both the Panos and the S2000 both managed to finish. Alright, everyone has managed to finish, and as I expected, the 787B overlapped everyone except for me, and oddly enough, I was closer in that race than I ironically thought I was going to be, and my front tyres are shot. But in the end of that, I've scored a total of 8 wins and 92 points to add on to my competency. I have won by a total of 24 points over the Mazda 787B, who won 2 out of the final 3 races. The S2000 finished 3rd, 11 points clear of the Aspirante and the FTO, who both tied for 4th, even though it was the Aspirante that took the 4th position on this occasion. And then at the back, with 20 points after coming strong in the closing stages, was the GT40. So 92, 68, 34, 23, 23, and 20 are officially your final point standings for the Professional GT All-Stars. And as of which, I won this championship by a total of 24 points. And we are going to surpass the 2 million mark by now, because we win 400,000 credits. Here's to hoping that I manage to get a good car from this. What car do we win from this? We win the Nissan R390 from this championship. Nice. Very nice. So there we are. That's our prize car. And officially, I impressively won 8 out of 10 races in that championship. So, just got Route 11 reverse and Tokyo to clean up in this championship, but ultimately, overall, with my Pagani Zonda, I basically dominated that championship. So, 8 out of 10 races overall, even though I did not think I was going to win a test course, but surprisingly in the end I did. And before we do that, obviously, my car is pretty dirty, so I'm just going to wash it. I'm also going to change the oil whilst I'm here, because that too is very dirty. And let's now check out our prize cars. And still at 83%, but we are now pretty much 77% complete with the game overall. And I do have a total of 237 wins now officially to my name. And in the end of that, I drove 751 kilometers in this thing, which is somewhere just under 500 miles, to those of you who are NTSC viewers. Anyways, this is our car, the Nissan R390 GT1 LM race car. And I must admit, in many cases, this is quite an astonishing prize car for me to win. And evidently, I will definitely have some usage for this thing. So yeah, you know, there is that. Alright, I'm done. And so, there we are. The Professional GT All-Stars is now done, and next time we shall be doing the Professional All Japan GT Championship. So with that, stay tuned for more of GT3.